If you're buying or selling a condo in Panama City Beach, please take a minute and watch this video. It could really, really help you. And in fact, it could save you a lot of money. My name is Craig Duran with the Duran Group over at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. For those of you who don't know me, I've been selling condos here since 2003. I was on site at Calypso during pre-construction, spent a lot of time in the condo market. And one of the things, well, I want to share with you a form that you need to be aware of when you're negotiating the purchase contract. This can affect you and how potentially thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars can show up on a closing statement. So I'm going to go through this with you pretty quick. There are a lot of talk there's a lot of talk about special assessments right now in the condo market. Some have been implemented, some have been levied, as we're going to see in this form I want to talk to you about. Some are being talked about. There's a variety of reasons this is happening. That's another video. But the ideas of monthly or master association insurance policies going up, repairs, fully funding reserves, all kinds of things are affecting condo budgets. And so these special assessments are not uncommon right now. So when you're deciding or when you're negotiating buying or selling, pay attention to this form and see how important this can be. This is called the Comprehensive Rider to the Residential Contract for Sale and Purchase. We affectionately, agents most of the time, just call this the Condo Rider. There are a couple of basics in here. Talks about whether an association has to approve a buyer or not. We don't have a lot of that in our area. There's also some associations have the right of first refusal. Again, we don't have a lot of that in our area. It mentions and discloses the amount of the monthly or quarterly HOA fee. There's one or more. And most people stop there with it. But take a look at, read the title of this: Fees, Assessments, Prorations, and Litigation, in paragraph 3. Most agents, most buyers and sellers sort of read this part and move on. But I want to focus on subparagraph C for a minute. And I'm going to read a little bit of this to you and explain how this can matter in a negotiation. So, special assessments and prorations. Seller represents that seller is not aware of any special or other assessment that has been levied by the association or that has been an item on the agenda or reported in the minutes of the association within 12 months prior to the effective date, except for the following. That's a pretty loaded clause there. Not only is it saying that the seller isn't aware of any levied assessments, meaning the assessment has already been approved and levied, due, but one hasn't even been talked about in the last 12 months and is in meeting minutes. So if a seller doesn't put anything here, watch what happens. So let's say you're a buyer for just a minute and you read the condo rider and this is left blank. If special assessments levied or pending exist as of the effective date, that's the date of your agreement, are disclosed above by, if special assessments, subparagraph 3. If special assessments levied or pending exist as of the effective date and have not been disclosed above, right here, by the seller, then the seller shall pay such assessments in full at the time of closing. This is huge. So if you're a seller, and I know a lot of people own these condos that live somewhere else, this is saying, and this is coming from a real estate licensee and not an attorney, please keep that in mind, but on its face, this is saying if you don't disclose that something's been levied or even shown up in the minutes in the last 12 months or has been discussed, then you're on the hook for the assessment. So I know a lot of people don't pay attention to the HOA meeting minutes month to month, quarter to quarter. I understand that. But when it's time to sell, it's something you better look into. One of the easiest things to do is to just request the last 12 months of meeting minutes and look through those and read those. Maybe share those with the real estate professional you're working with and see what there is to talk about or to disclose. Another idea is even maybe to mention here, see attached meeting minutes and provide the meeting minutes to the buyer. If not, you're on the hook for the entire amount. And some of these assessments recently have been pretty stout. I skipped ahead of subparagraph 2, but look at subparagraph 2 for just a minute. If special assessments levied or pending exist as of the effective date, are disclosed above by the seller here, and may be paid in installments. So not just a lump sum. We now have an assessment that's been levied. The seller's disclosed it on those blanks up above, and now it's due in installments. Then check 1, either the buyer or seller, if it's left blank, it's the buyer, shall pay installments due after closing. If the seller is checked, seller shall pay the assessment in full prior to or at the time of closing. Again, think about this if you're selling. I know of one assessment that right now in one particular building that runs through first quarter of 2025. So if you're not paying attention to one little checkbox on this form and someone presents you an offer and they check seller, you're on the hook for all these assessments through first quarter of 2025 in that example. And what a lot of people misunderstand, and there's language in the purchase agreement and there's language in the condo rider. A lot of agents, even who do this all the time, a lot of buyers and sellers misunderstand assessments and special assessments with the homeowners association fees. So what happens a lot of times is an agent helping a buyer make an offer will check this box seller. The special assessments levied or pending exist as of the effective date are disclosed above by the seller and may be due in installments. Seller shall pay the amount at closing. What a lot of people assume that means is that, the seller is going to pay the HOA fees up until the closing date and then the buyer is going to pay after it. That is not what this is talking about. This is talking about any potential assessment that's due in installments. Subparagraph 4, if after the effective date the association imposes a special assessment for improvements, works or services which was not pending as of the effective date, the date we agreed to buy and sell this thing, then the seller shall pay all amounts due before closing and buyer shall pay all amounts due after closing. And that makes sense somewhat. Everybody comes to an agreement. Nothing's been talked about and disclosed, and something pops up, then, hey, seller, it's your responsibility prior to closing, buyer, it's your responsibility after. It seems to make some sense. Subparagraph 5, a special assessment shall be deemed levied for purposes of this paragraph on the date when the assessment has been approved as required for enforcement pursuant to Florida law and the condominium docs listed in paragraph 5. That's a big one. That has everything to do with the definition of what something's actually been levied. I'm not going to go into that here. Ask your real estate professional when you're negotiating something. And finally, subparagraph D here, seller represents that seller is not aware of pending or anticipated litigation affecting the property or the common elements, if any, except as follows. Some advice for sellers first, and then I'll give you some advice for buyers. 2 things. You better make sure and disclose anything, do some due diligence, and make sure you understand what may have been talked about as far as assessments goes over the last 12 months. And now as far as litigation goes, seller represents that seller is not aware of pending or anticipated litigation affecting the property or the common elements, meaning the pool, the gym, that kind of thing, except as follows. Now, I understand it'll be pretty easy for a seller, an absentee owner, someone lives somewhere else, to not be involved in the homeowners association day to day. But if you are going to take the time to look maybe at the last 12 months of meeting minutes, if you haven't been keeping up with it, you may also learn some things there, what might be talked about with litigation. And we as real estate professionals would always encourage you to disclose anything you find out, just like the form is saying. One step further you could do is to ask the community association manager, ask the CAM, hey, do you know of anything that's being talked about or not? At least you ask the question. If the CAM says, hey, there isn't anything being discussed, maybe ask the president of the board or a board member, hey, is there anything that's being talked about? And if you have a few no's in your email, something in writing saying, no, we're not aware of anything, then at least if there is something that pops up later, you as a seller have done your due diligence to find out, hey, I've asked some questions. I'm not aware of anything. I've even asked people that are supposed to know about this. They don't know anything. here are 12 months of meeting minutes. This is all I know. This is what I'm now disclosing. That's going to potentially save you thousands or tens of thousands of dollars if there are special assessments being talked about, there is litigation being talked about, and you just stick your head in the sand and say, well, I live in another state and I don't know what's going on. So very, very important to do some due diligence when you're signing, you're disclosing this information. Buyers, let's look at it from a buyer's point of view for a second. Let's say, first of all, let's talk about any buyer who's purchased recently. And if you get into a situation a month or two or three down the road that a special assessment hits, it probably would be a really interesting conversation with an attorney if this section was left blank when you were purchasing, but there were assessments being talked about in meeting minutes, being disclosed. Something to think about. There's something, I would want to have some answers to those questions. If you are making a purchase, say you haven't negotiated something yet, or you're just getting into a negotiation, then really make sure when you're offering, I would be checking this box all day long and letting a seller respond to that. Even if a seller doesn't disclose any potential pending assessments here in this line in subparagraph 1 or litigation, I would be probably even including in the offer some language like asking for 12 months of meeting minutes, so me as a buyer, I could review those myself and not take the seller's word for it. Let me look at 12 months of meeting minutes. Seller, please provide that within 3 days, within 5 days of an agreement, and I can look through that. Very important document to understand. There's some other things that are very important to understand in this when you're buying and selling condos, but I wanted to touch on that special assessment one. It's one we're seeing come up over and over again, and I see this document misused and misunderstood often. So hopefully this helps you. If you have any questions on it, feel free to give me a call, shoot me a text, 850-290-0417. This is really based out of selling condos in Florida, so really if you're anywhere in Florida, this should still apply. But any questions on this buying side, selling side, how it can affect, this is almost what I do almost all day, every day, is a lot of condo business. So happy to help. Hope this helps someone out there. Thanks for watching.